All right, so how does philosophy help us to navigate life in the time of coronavirus? Predictable claim from a philosophy professor. So I want to go back to something that Randy Boyd said in the remark that I quoted to you a minute ago. He said, "Much has been delayed, but it's not been lost." So, all right, let's think about that for a second. What does it mean to delay something? Well, you could press the pause button. You could literally just freeze frame it, stop it, and then start it up again at a later date. And I think that a lot of us right now are very strongly tempted to approach this situation like that. We're just going to wait until this is over and then we're going to resume business as usual. So that's one sense of delay that we could be thinking about here. But another sense of delay is not pressing the pause button, but allowing things or doing things um, in a way that unfolds more slowly, that takes place over a longer period of time. So delayed progression, delayed functioning, right? So I want you to think about that for a second. And here's my suggestion. When we think about these losses that we're all facing, loss of job, loss of, loss of life, loss of health, all of these really, really scary things, it's like the coronavirus just swooped in and pressed the pause button for us on life. It's like suddenly everything ground to a halt, and this thing just happened that kind of had this power to freeze frame your life. And that is the kind of existential situation that a lot of us feel like we're in. Okay, so there's an image for you, okay? Now, let me present to you the same basic state of affairs in imagery that should be familiar to you from our discussions about personal identity before spring break. Another way to think about it is like this. You can't go to class. You can't go to work. You can't go to the mall. You can't go to the movies. You can't go to the bar. You can't hang out with your friends. You can't even hug your grandma because you might give her a life-threatening illness. And when all of these can'ts are constraining us, then the effect is that the coronavirus has basically swooped in and ripped us right out of our social network, our social embeddedness that is part of who we are. And we've lost our moorings. We've lost our context and the ties and woven inness that was making us able to orient, able to stay kind of upright and able to know where we are and who we are. And so that kind of dimension of social connectedness is what is one of the things that is coming under threat in this novel, unprecedented context. And that is a different, distinct kind of threat of harm or a risk that we're all running right now, that we're all coping with. It's separate from the risk of illness. It's separate from the risk of financial insecurity. It's the risk of change coming from outside, and even potentially really harmful change coming from outside to who we are, because who we are is partly a matter of who we're with and where we exist in our social networks in our community. So, okay. So that's interesting, right? We feel like we're in limbo right now. There's vertigo, there's chaos. And now we know why, because we've read Susan Bryson's account of what a person is, right? We know why. It's because our personhood is coming under threat or being challenged or being unsettled in some way, right? Okay. But what's even more interesting is this. Because we've read that and because we've thought about what it is to be a person in this way, we know the remedy for this part of the threat of the pandemic. The remedy is this: stay knit in, stay connected. So what does Bryson talk about? She talks about how, to heal from trauma, to remake a self in the aftermath of trauma, what you do is you narrate, you forge connections with other people, you manage to kind of form a new self. Well, okay, we're going to have to do some of that. We're going to have to do some rebuilding, some restructuring, some throwing out and weaving of new connections. But we can also stay knit in, stay connected, kind of keep those lines of social identity strong. And that, I think, is where the rubber hits the road for the purposes of our class. So what does that mean? Well, what I mean is this. I want to encourage you all, above all, to stay enrolled. Stay enrolled in your classes. Stay enrolled in my class. Stay enrolled in your classes. Do everything you can to maintain your identity as a student right now in the midst of this. You know, as I mentioned, we're all going to be looking at taking on some new roles that we've never taken on before. Let's try not to let the old roles fall by the wayside, because that will be profoundly disorienting. So I want to encourage you all to take a deep breath and focus and do what you came here to do. You're going to do it a little more slowly, a little more painfully, but you can do what you came here to do. And I'm going to do what I came here to do, which is teach this class. Hopefully not in a totally crappy way. Okay, so that's my suggestion. You've already done more than 50% of the work for this class. You can do it. You can do it in this weird way that we're going to figure out together. So I don't know exactly how I'm going to phrase this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this set of ideas up on the discussion board, and I want to get your thoughts on it. The idea that being a student now is more important than it was 3 weeks ago, not less important. Being you, the student, you know, the undergraduate at UT, that is an important part of your resistance to the upheaval and disruption and damage that this pandemic and our, you know, eternally, perennially evolving response to it is doing in all of our lives. That's the way of keeping an arc of continuity across all of the change that's going to occur. That's my suggestion. So I'm going to put this up on the discussion board, and I want to hear your thoughts about it. Okay,